ground.
Well, of course, a very good morning once again, my brother Stephen Mbide. He is in Chitintale trying to take a look at the traffic update. The people within the jurisdiction have thrown any regard for the adherence to the standard operating procedures. He says people are out in droves. They are not caring about the threat being expounded more by the COVID-19 pandemic and so forth. But then that demeanor or behavior is being expounded on more by the fact that we are veering towards the end of this 42-day lockdown. And many of the people who are, grappling in their houses with no end in sight are now coming out in droves, and they're saying life has to resume. So if the president doesn't speak earlier, yes, we might see an exponential increase on Saturday of the number of people who are actually clamoring to leave their houses and go out to start even work. So meaning government needs to start right now to expound more on what they are willing to do as an exit strategy plan for this reopening from this 42-day lockdown. But since that is not forthcoming, and as we wait to see what shall culminate from the situation, let's talk to some panelists or experts. We do have Ssenyonga, who is a lawyer, yes, and also a member of Zoe Ministries. Yes, we also do have Joseph Ocheno, a member of the UPC, who shall be joining us later on. We also do have another gentleman, Simon, that is Bishop Samuel. He is with the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. Mr. Simon Ssenyonga, let me start with you, and we talk about this 42-day lockdown, how it has wrought havoc on the people or the populace within this country. But then recent revelations indicate that government has no exit plan. Just there was somewhere we didn't have an entry plan as we veered into this lockdown. What do you make of this?
Actually, we had an entry plan.
Did we have an entry plan?
Yes, I think earlier on in the year, the Honorable Ruth Acheng launched...
For the 42-day lockdown?
Yeah, no, before we got into this.
All right.
Actually, in the middle of the year, before they declared this lockdown on June 18th, 2021, she talked about a national sort of resuscitation plan.
All right.
Resuscitating the healthcare system, the strategies they had, and all that. But it was really piecemeal, as usual. Why? They have always hidden behind the aspect of this is an emergency, so it has caught us off guard. Yet the promise of the president, if you read his speech of 18th June 2021, he talks about how our healthcare system was grappling. But you see, then the health minister comes and says, we have done everything that is possible. So there's always been a contradiction. So what you see here as the lack of an exit plan is actually a magnification of an apparent confusion which is existent in the government bodies.
So what does that mean? That even as we veer to the end of this lockdown, we shouldn't anticipate a reopening?
I think what that demonstrates is the lack of sustainability of this particular lockdown. And that's why some of us very soon are going to the courts of law to challenge this, because we are just tired of this. Let me tell the Ugandans out there, let them not get satisfied with just the opening up of the nation. There has to be a total opening up, because what normally happens is that they will come and they will, there's all this scare. You've seen even in the media right now, there is a lot of massive, cross-cutting publication. One of the dailies is pushing for, experts are saying, lockdown, you should continue locking down. Experts are saying, we are going into the third wave, the curve hasn't yet flattened, they expect a much more dangerous variant. Another one is saying, look here, there are civil liberties at stake, there are people who are supposed to be protected, exposing all the wrongs. So what you're seeing there is a major clash, but also you're seeing that the government is fueling, some opportunists in the government are fueling the extension of the lockdown. And that's why some of us are going in courts of law to challenge this kind of
How soon are you going to court?
Very soon, as soon as next week. By Monday, you will be hearing that we shall be in the courts of law. We are seeking injunctive reliefs, especially in the continuous violations, in regards to the continuous violations of fundamental human rights, for example. I'll tell you that that at the center of my heart is the freedom of worship, which has continuously been violated, and very many other liberties.
I see.
The right to work, employment, all these have been violated continuously without any clear strategy, any clear plan, because locking down is and of itself not the end game. It can only be a temporary means to an end. But where there is lack of clear vision, then what we expect is what we are in right now. So there is that lack of hope, there's despondency, and subsequently apathy amongst majority.
Indeed. Speaking of litigation and so forth, do you intend to also run to court over the other issue, the government's failure to actually handle all vulnerable people within this country? Do you also plan to litigate that?
I think our biggest priority as of now is to focus on really demonstrating that whatever the president is doing, especially in the issuance of these policies and directives, you see that the president's word does not necessarily amount into law. What you've seen in this nation is that the president speaks, the following day the military and everyone is implementing the law. But there is a very clear procedural aspect that has to be undertaken. Now, normally what you have in this nation is that the president speaks, then they legitimize what he has said through the Public Health Act. But yet, the kind of legal system that we are in, there's a very clear procedure of how you get to the parliament, how all these things are approved before you can declare such situations.
Of course, human rights violations, the fact that vulnerable people are beyond 8.3 million in this country, yet we targeted only 500,000, 107. So in your own opinion, should we also be litigating or running to court?
Yeah, because
over this case, vulnerable people not being catered for?
Yes, because
it's the mandate of government in the Constitution.
Exactly, because number one, you look at the flawed procurement process into that cash transfer program of the Honorable Prime Minister. You're looking at, when you talk about human rights are interdependent. The violation of one right leads to the subsequent violation of the other. If I violated your right to employment and I fired you today, what will happen is that subsequently your life, because life, the courts of law have interpreted in this country, is not just breathing in and out, but actually that very aspect of you being able to live a dignified life. So by treating Ugandans in that way, you're denying them dignity. What lockdown does in this nation is that it takes away the dignity of majority Ugandans. So what you see, I was seeing the updates, the traffic updates, Ugandans are silently resisting the lockdown. And you cannot play with their patience, because at one time there will be that spark in any particular nation. So lockdown can no longer be sustainable, and that's why we have had consistent voices that end the lockdowns now.
But has the lockdown achieved its purpose? Because we've noticed, a reduction in the number of infections that we were recording before in the thousands. Now they are under 400, under 300, 327, if you will, the latest numbers that we are getting. In your opinion, do you feel like this lockdown achieved its desired target of reducing cases?
The ultimate, by the way, if you read the speech of the president of 18th June 2021, the ultimate was not just in reducing the numbers. Actually, the president said the ultimate of having this lockdown, he said, it is temporary to help us curb, but above all, it was about the vaccination. He talks about the procurement of Johnson & Johnson, I think the visa and all that. Now, I'm coming to tell you that we did not achieve our purpose. Secondly, when you talk about a lockdown, what the Ministry of Health is not telling us is that we are being presented two figures of those who have been diagnosed as sick, those who are, I think, recovering and all that. No one is telling us those who are dying from the effects of the lockdown, because that's the majority,
poverty
actually,
and so forth.
All that poverty, the psychiatric issues and all these, other issues happening, the failure to access the most basic medication and healthcare. Yeah, so
I need my insulin, I can't get it anymore, I'm
because
diabetic
you're under lockdown. What the biggest beneficiaries of this lockdown actually have been, for example, the security forces, who sit and put up all these barriers, and they are making some money. They're having a field day in the lockdown right now. And you see, there's been...
And who is accounting for the funds or the fines that they are receiving from members of the public? Because at some point they had said they'll be issuing out receipts. They are not doing that. They are receiving cash.
I think that's a clarion call to the Auditor General. Recently, I saw him. I was following the debate, not the debate, but the status update from the Honorable Prime Minister and the response from the leader of opposition, and they were referring to the Auditor General's report. I haven't seen him account, because all these things are the statutory instruments that enforce the lockdown. They say that there will be a penalty for these resources, because the president said that let's shift away from feeding the prisons, because we are having a stretch on the system, and let us have this accountability. But nobody's accounting for it.
The money will trickle down to the finance ministry and so forth, but they are not issuing out any receipts. I'm seeing these officers receiving cash from these people who have been arrested at the barricades and so forth. So issues to do with accountability. Yeah,
I think the issues with accountability, I think for me, the first situation you had is that Parliament was suspended, I think, for 2 weeks. Now, the accounting committees of Parliament were never existent. What happened was that a pseudo committee was created, so to say. I call it pseudo because there was no... They flawed a lot of procedural laws to establish it. The COVID-19 Parliamentary Task Force, I think headed by Honorable Abdu Katuntu, was established. Now, Parliament and all its committees were supposed to be accounting were not existent. Right now, what is happening is that we are we are victimizing the parliamentarians for receiving some 200 million. We are calling it immoral, when even actually they are following their, it's a legal obligation. And you see, the more Ugandans keep on thinking about things this way, then they don't actually see the reality of what encounters them. The reality on ground is that the lockdown is not sustainable. The lockdown is the first step for any totalitarian or authoritarian government to begin removing your fundamental human rights. So we have given them
so you're saying the NRM government is using the lockdown as a guise to remove all the fundamental human rights of Ugandans?
I mean, should we speak about the weaponization, the use of COVID-19, the weaponization of COVID-19 against opponents, the incidents of 18th December 2020? Are you talking about how people have been indiscriminately charged over what they call noble acts of, of helping, reaching out to the different people who they think are indigent or are vulnerable? So I think there's been, number one, massive weaponization of the COVID-19 against the citizenry. There has been a lot of blame gaming in this situation. You see that the president will come and say, remember the first lockdown when Parliament, I think, declared a particular supplementary budget, the president comes and says, no, stop this. This is, and I think the likes of Gerald Karuhanga go to court. So what is happening? There's a lot of blame gaming, but also there's a lot of opportunism in this particular lockdown. So it doesn't benefit actually the citizens. So this blanket cover of let us have a general lockdown, it's nothing. And what I really call upon the media to do is to question some of these narratives. Some of these things we take on as blanket measures to help us in the healthcare system have actually been disputed elsewhere. If you didn't know for a fact, that actually the World Health Organization has said a total lockdown is not something sustainable. I think recently I was reading a report from the UNESCO,
because they were saying
you can't lock down
matters we should focus on curtailing the number of COVID-19 cases. We should also put in we should also focus on the fact that the people's livelihoods are also being affected.
Exactly.
You can curtail the movement of these people, but what are they going to eat? How are they going to sleep? You have a landlord who needs money at the end of the day, but you're not working every day. So that's what the World Health Organization was taking a look at. And also, right now, we had called for this lockdown to embark on a situation whereby we start vaccinations, which are not forthcoming. So since they are not forthcoming, do you envisage a situation whereby we extend this lockdown and then say we are starting vaccinations?
I mean, you've been listening to the reports from, I think, recently I was listening to Dr. Monica Musonero. Yesterday, I think the Minister of Health addressed the nation, and they're saying that there is a particular target. I think they are targeting 5% of the population, it's about 22 million, and it hasn't happened. And yet there seems to be a lot of controversy. You know that right now, even the vaccination crisis is coming because of the unfairness in terms of, vaccine equity. So you're having vaccine inequity, you're having the international community calling us out, sort of trying to control the narrative of the Ugandan system. We haven't yet taken a bold step. You see, the thing is that as Ugandans, we have to begin asking ourselves the ideological questions behind some of these blanket measures imposed on us. We need to stop being so surface-minded and we think it's all about the lockdown. Question the narratives. Where is this taking us? What was the origin of the lockdown? I'll tell you. All right? It was being used in China. You saw that the president of America then, Donald Trump, calls out the World Health Organization. If you're following the debate in the Senate today, Senator Rand Paul, Dr. Anthony Fauci, they're saying that was this a lab leaked
in
virus?
Wuhan, yes.
And they're saying that was there any authenticity? Did you finance research? We're not going to ask
then the
ourselves
liberals
these
were
questions.
telling Donald Trump that then the liberals were actually telling Donald Trump that he was out of his mind. Then the same people are now saying, yes, we should go back to Wuhan and see whether or not this was manufactured in a lab. All right, let's go to Ajumani District. I have Scovin Icheta. He's going to be talking about the plight of refugees within this jurisdiction, reduction in food rations, a conversation I've been having largely with so many of the refugees and their NGOs. A very good morning, Mr. Icheta. What's the latest?
Yes, good morning, Romeo Bisiko. I'm live in Ajuman district. You remember it is really heavy rain here in Ajuman. But all the case is that yesterday the Minister of State for Disaster Relief and Preparedness was in in Ajuman district. He toured the refugee settlement in Ipagirenya, whereby he met the leaders of the women leaders in Ipagirenya. In the meeting, actually, they present their memorandum that they are not happy about the issues of the food ratio reduction, that is reduced to 60%. But this has really drawn attention of the minister. And when the officials of UNHCR and OPM also responded, and the women took it in a good reason. But of course, the reason is that at the moment, they say that per day they take only one meal per day. this is definitely going to cause a self-repatriation to their country, and if the matter is not resolved in amicably, because they also complain that they do not have a land for cultivation, which needs the government to respond in this situation, because it is really giving them a hard life as far as feeding aspect is concerned in a refugee settlement. And they are really calling upon the minister to respond very well in that situation as far as, and today the minister is going to meet some officials of the development agents, and also he's going to have an interaction. And yesterday, the minister also went to Elegu border point, where he met officials of URA and Immigration Department, and including the district officials of Amur. But of course, the move is all about to have a familiarization of herself in whatever, so that she will be in position to make everything possible for this nation, as far as being the Minister of Disaster Preparedness is concerned. Of course, you remember this is her first time to be in the ministry. And thank you so much. With all the context, I would like to say that we'll use everything. Back to you, Romeo Bisiku from Ajuman.
My brother's Kovini Cheta right there doing the most in Ajumani district. Thank you very much for that update. We shall get back to you to get more details in that regard. Now, joining us for this conversation is Bishop Samuel from the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, and also Joseph Ochieno. They'll introduce themselves before we go for a breather. Very good morning, Mr. Samuel Bishop.
Yes.
Good morning, Romeo. Your line is not very clear.
Indeed.
First of all, you have already mentioned my name,
yes,
where I come from. But I would like also to add my voice on thanking the French government for donating about $10.8 million of testing kits and protective gear to Uganda. That means actually the other governments are appreciating what the measures we are taking to fight against COVID-19. Well, such relief cannot come to, careless government.
Countries that understand that this is not weaponization of COVID-19.
Yeah, basically. And maybe the other thing, really, I'm really disturbed a bit by the new ministers. We have really much hopes in them.
Yes.
But then now, a minister to say, I'm not going to ride in a car which costs the taxpayers' money, 600 million. And then another one says, I'm not going to use this furniture. Please, Honorable Minister,
yes,
you come and then explain to Ugandans exactly as to why, what's the problem, what rumor have you got that's wrong with the cars and office equipment that's supposed to use. It's a wastage of time, especially now.
So they should be embracing it.
Yes, they should have been embracing. What's wrong with the coverage?
Bishop Samuel, let's also bring in another of our panelists and introduce them. Joseph Ochieno, UPC's third president in that regard. I'm not sure he would like to be described in that way. Please, a very good morning, Joseph Ochieno. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Romeo. Good to see you, my brother.
Yes. All right, we shall get more into this conversation with Joseph Ochieno, Bishop Samuel, and also Simon Ssenyonga shortly after this break.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Into every moment.
Thanks, Mom.
Nurture the moment with Minute Maid Delight, global #1 juice and juice drinks brand.
Safety starts with you. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Stay home, stay safe. Let Jumia do the hard work and take care of you. Buy home essentials and groceries, and we will deliver them safely because Jumia cares.
Daily Monitor brings you an exciting experience with the e-paper this season. Subscribe daily, monthly or quarterly and win lots of prizes like branded items, TV sets, StarTimes satellite dishes, airtime, data, power banks, children's tablets, MiFis and many more. Visit epaper.nationmedia.com/UG to subscribe and be part of the promotion. Daily Monitor. Truth every day. Terms and conditions apply.
Daily Monitor ng'erimu ne European Union delegation mu Uganda bakomerezaawo ebitundu 8 bijjudde essanyu n'ebisanyusa eby'akataba ka komedi akamanyiddwa nga Tessa and Luka. Ebitundu bino byonna bijjudde essanyu nga Tessa and Luka bali mu lugendo lwabwe okuva Jumani era omanye biki bayitamu ebisanyusa n'ebyo bye baazuula bye batasobola kwerabira. Mulimu ebyokuyiga bingi n'ebyokuteebereza bingi era nga wandyetaze nnyo kasoma tukkiriza mwana w'okuyitwako mukisa guno ogw'akataba kajjudde ebiyigiriza n'ebisanyusa. Weefunire kopi y'obuli lwakubiri okuva mu Rainbow Magazine.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Okay. Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us. The 42-day lockdown has veered towards an end, but then there's no exit strategy. That's why we are having Ssenyonga. We are also having Bishop Samuel. We're also having Joseph Ucheno to make sense of what should be the end game as far as doing away with COVID-19 is concerned. Bishop Samuel, talk to us. A very good morning once again.
Yeah, morning.
I've been talking to Ssenyonga and he says government did not have an entry plan into this 42-day lockdown, and as much they do not have an exit plan as far as this COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. We haven't gotten any information as to what is going to be happening now that the 42-day lockdown has come to an end. You've seen people in Chitintale, they're coming out. People in other jurisdictions, they're coming out because they feel like the 42-day lockdown has come to an end. Government is still silent. We're still waiting for the president.
Yeah, of course, but you see, it's not proper for one to say that we got into the lockdown without a plan. Now we are coming out of the lockdown still without a plan. I think to me it's not proper to say that.
All
basically,
right.
we have a plan. But you see, the president doesn't just wake up in the morning and says, you know what, let us have a lockdown. I know a lockdown is not one of the things that Ugandans want. None of us wants it, but then at the same time, it's upon government to protect lives of Ugandans. We have to do whatever it takes to make sure that the lives of Ugandans are
But is there a plan to protect Ugandans? Because the initial plan was, let's inoculate or vaccinate 21.9 million people during the 42-day lockdown. But then as we veer towards the end of this lockdown, yes, we've only inoculated 5%, which is 1.1 million people. Don't you think that means we didn't have a plan to begin with?
No, we had a plan. Now you see, about the vaccination, I would like to say that there were some delays actually where we had to get the vaccines from. Even if when the other people said they were going to send us the vaccines, Uganda purchased.
Yes.
Okay. You have to understand there is no country under COVAX that has ever negotiated the price of the vaccine directly with the manufacturer. So basically now what happens is we don't manufacture the vaccines ourselves here. And now the ones who manufacture the vaccines, you realize they were hit so badly with this with the virus. So what happens now is like now getting us the vaccines was really kind of a problem. And that's why you see that the president decided that we should have our own manufacturing vaccine facility here. But we purchased, and I have reason to believe, by the time actually we said by the space of this time we should be having a very reasonable number of vaccinated Ugandans. We were expecting that they would have sent us the vaccines already, which those people out there have delayed a bit. Okay, so that one we cannot, at some point we can't pull much strings actually longer. And you see, even the price of the vaccines actually is a bit high, because now if you look at actually the cost of one vaccine and yet you have to take 2 vaccines, that one it's going to cost about $17 on a growing economy. This growing economies in Africa, that is too much. You know, it's like this. The whites are a bit selfish, actually. You know, it costs a lot. So basically, it's not that we didn't care, we didn't have a plan. We had a plan. We have not spoke to one manufacturer, or we have not spoke to one manufacturer or 2. We have tried to write to them, and they have promised.
Indeed, all of them. Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, AstraZeneca.
So they have tried. They said, okay, we will deliver. But then now, their procurement processes of delivering is what is really making us look like we didn't have a plan. But we have a plan. And maybe secondly, the president does not work in isolation. The president works with the cabinet.
Yes, Bishop.
Okay, works with the cabinet. So there is no suggestion that he brings out without actually consulting with the people he works with.
All right, thank you very much.
That means
Bishop
we
Samuel
had a plan.
Bishop Samuel, thank you very much. He says government has had a plan since the onset of this COVID-19 pandemic. But what does Joseph Ochieno think about what is happening right now? Very good morning once again, Joseph Ochieno. Thank you for joining us once again. Do you believe government did have a plan, entry or exit or otherwise, during this COVID-19 pandemic, or the 42-day lockdown, if you will? And do you envisage a situation where we actually call for an extension of this lockdown under the guise of expediting the vaccination campaign?
I really do hope they do have a plan. Of course they do. And of course they did have a plan. But I take strong exceptions from your guest there about the manner in which he attempts to put all the blames on everyone else except Ugandans and Ugandan governments. We pay government to work for us. We pay government to think for us. We pay government to research for us. We pay government to research and ensure that they make the right decisions for us. And it's actually right that Mr. Museveni is not alone. Mr. Museveni has got a cabinet. We pay them to do that work. So, meaning that if it's one man who's paid with a huge amount of privilege as president, cannot think enough worth of a president, and is backed by a team and they cannot think worth enough for us, that means there's a problem. But really, it's not about a blame game. You know, I have been on these campaigns for the last over 1 year, starting on with the very early part of last year. I had hoped that COVID would be the first opportunity since NRM came to power that would have helped bring this country together at a cross-party and a cross-political divide level. It really hasn't worked. If anything, COVID has shown that this is a country where ordinary citizens' lives is like a tree. In fact, a good friend of mine who's been a regular guest of yours was suggesting that possibly this government seems to work as if they're serving a tree. My point is this, that if we did have a plan, I don't really see it in Nagongera or in Tororo. If we did have a plan, I don't see it in some of the outskirts of Kampala, where a good friend of mine has to organize in the slums of Kampala to make sure that they collect money to give out to try and help people who are struggling, as struggling families. And I wonder where all the collections have gone. But quite clearly, quick things about vaccines and vaccination, which is really the most important thing, really, is that a priority should really be that we must vaccinate. And 1%, 1.1% is simply not good enough. You can put any explanations on earth, it simply just does not add up. We need to vaccinate, number one. We need to test, and we need to continue doing that. That's what we needed to have been doing anyway. And we need to make sure that we mobilize resources enough to ensure that people who fall sick are treated. My experience is that, including not far away from here where people have fallen sick, there is no evidence. The local health facility here that I don't want to name on this morning's occasion, has no medicine, let alone basically for malaria. Where is all the money that has been mobilized? And of course, yes, the vaccine, $17, extremely too much money to save one life. What about $56,000 that we are spending on a member of parliament, some of whom you have no clue where they are?
All right, thank you very much, Joseph Ochieno, for that submission. Let me also bring in Simon Ssenyonga. Ssenyonga, what do you make of all this? Is it rational for MPs to even be receiving these 200 million Uganda shillings each for these cars in the midst of a pandemic when you are grappling? Like Joseph Ochieno said, some health facilities are not well bankrolled with the health facilities, with the health resources that they need. Yet we are doling out 200 million shillings to these MPs in the midst of this pandemic. Is it rational?
I think to ask whether the MPs should receive what is legally entitled to them, which they are not doing outside the law, is to ask whether any public servant should actually receive their salary. You see, the shift into the rule by law as opposed to the rule of law begins when the ordinary citizens fail to understand what the fundamental obligation is, but also the duty of their representatives. You see, when we were going through this campaign season, many of the Ugandans were blatantly I'm saying that let the people campaign the way they want to campaign. Some of us made an effort to remind people about the duties of a member of parliament under Article 79 of the Constitution, all right, to perform oversight, accountability, representation, legislation, among other things. But the Ugandans consistently extended the duty of the MPs into attending burials, supporting families, because that was part of what we sanitized in language calling corporate social responsibility. But the thing we fail to realize is that this comes back biting to us. Now, right now, many of these MPs went in those seats as investors. Now, that's the
they need to recoup their money.
Right now, they're recouping their money. Now, you can argue the part of it's immoral, it's illegal.
They won't give it
but
back.
Where were you when you're asking them for that money to support you for the barrier, to do this, to do this? So let them reap big. And you see, this until as a nation.
So this is a lesson to the citizens.
To the citizens to awake.
Don't commercialize politics.
The thing is that the commercialization of politics is a two-way street thing. It's not only on those who serve the resources, but also those who receive. Your moral duty as a citizen was to put them on the line and say, because you had.
What are you willing to do for me?
Yes.
At the end of the day.
I mean, what is? Let me tell you something. I ran for a campaign, all right, to represent the special interest group. Special interest created to represent the young people. I spent over 300 million in an election.
I remember.
What is 200 million? I'm telling you, it's not. You don't need to make so much noise over it. So until the citizens learn, let us leave alone this political correctness when you come on TV and say, it's no. I mean, I had my good brother here speaking about the efforts of the president. And I think the president has been the champion, the biggest champion of corruption in this nation.
Yes.
I mean, plain examples. Recently, you're having an appointment of a minister who was previously implicated in a Gavi fund scandal. Why do I quote Gavi specifically in this season? Gavi was meant for the vaccine, it was meant to help in the AIDS fight.
Yes.
Where are Uganda? Where President Museveni? I was watching a recent speech where he was visiting President Bush and was being championed for the fight against AIDS. But you have a minister, I think she's called Kaboyo, the lady, I think Patrick, something like that, recently implicated. She goes to Parliament, Appointments Committee says, you're not fit for that. Then she comes back, before we know it, Parliament suspended, and she's awakened. How many ministers have been implicated? My brother was talking about very strongly. Some of these ministers who they are saying that they are fighting. Today we're having massive controversies. I was seeing the Honorable Minister Judith Nabakuba saying that, we are putting up, she's making spirited fights for the land, the likes of Honorable Sam Mayanja. But if Judith Nabakuba was the best champion to fight for the indigent, why then did she succeed in Mitiana, where she used to be a champion? Soon after, they were amplifying the likes of Ida Nataba. So the question of where we find ourselves now is a question of us awakening as a nation. We have slept, we have slumbered for so long. Right now, it comes back biting. We can no longer sleep enough and we can no longer cry enough. I mean, governments all over the world are not simply designed, as my brother said, to merely help individuals. In times where the citizens are inactive and they're not building on their civic competence, what happens is that then you're taken advantage of by the state, because it has the tools of suppression, it has the tools of weaponization, it has the tools of oppression. Now, when you do not realize that this is applied over time and consistently, and you keep on following the most irrational discussions, there is no way you can come out of this.
So meaning these MPs are entitled to this money, the 200 million?
No, I think let's not try to,
because this is what citizens were saying. The citizens were saying, okay, we are in the midst of the pandemic. Government is saying they have no money. So where did the 200 million Ugandan shillings come for each of the MPs? 529 from a government that is saying we do not have money. Please donate as Ugandans. I mean, in the wake of donations, they are doling out this money. So Ugandans were like, what is the rationale?
I think Ugandans need to stop being very, idle, so to say. I'll tell you, for example, a recent report released by an organization called the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights pinned the government for borrowing. We received grants from the IMF, from the World Bank, from the African Development Bank. One of those, if you realize the budget speech of 2020, the theme of that budget was the recapitalization of the Ugandan economy. Now, resources were brought from the African Development Bank to recapitalize the Ugandan Development Bank. These resources always, one, mismanaged. Priorities were changed along the way. That's why you had reports, for example, one owner of the Akamwesi hostels was deemed to be indigent, receiving over 40 billion. What the government tends to tell us that this is times of emergency. In times of emergency, don't ask for accountability. That's why many who are pushing, the proponents of the lockdown, keep on telling you, don't ask for accountability. One of these biggest proponents has been Dr. Diana Twine, who has openly said one of the challenges we have in the terms of procurement of vaccines is the rigorous procurement procedures. But you see, under the PPDA Act, there are procedures for emergency procurement. But all those were floated. Those are not my words. The Auditor General's report, which was referred to by the leader of opposition in response to the statement of the status quo by the Prime Minister.
All right, Simon Ssenyonga is a lawyer and also a member of Zoe Ministry. Let's also bring in Simon, that is Bishop Samuel. He is from the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. Bishop Samuel, let's talk about another issue right there. Government is mandated to think for the people. Government is mandated to take care of the people, especially in the wake of such circumstances where you do have a raging pandemic. But then the same government is the one asking for members of the public for some kind of help, donations in the wake of this COVID-19 pandemic. Does that make any sense? Is that rational? In the wake of reports that even MPs are receiving 200 million each for cars.
First of all, I don't know why my brother here would spend a tune of 300 million in a campaign. For what? Were you a visitor in that constituency where you had gone to, to stand? If the people there knew you, there would be no reason as to why you have to spend 300 million actually in a campaign. But anyway, the thing of the
Bishop is spitting fire.
Bishop is a technocrat, not a politician.
Yeah,
I'll have a conversation with
my brother was in Tororo,
Joseph.
Joseph. Actually, he was saying that government is paid for, they pay government to think and so on and so forth.
The taxpayers.
The taxpayers. Let us not politicize the issue of coronavirus. Yes, it is true. Yeah, you pay, Ugandans pay government to think for them, and that's what we are doing. Every measures that we are taking are as a result of a thought process. So we are not denying you any chance of living a healthy life. Every measurement we are taking is to ensure that Ugandans live a healthy life. Now, on the issue that you have talked about, fine, the 200 million really. On one hand, I think the MPs of the 11th Parliament are trying to be selfish to the newcomers.
I see.
Yeah, the MPs, most especially those ones who managed to make it to come back in the 11th Parliament and when the 10th Parliament, they are being selfish to the newcomers. But in the same breath, really, why 200 million shillings really? Who among those MPs has a cow of 200 million shillings? And let them be sincere. If they really have hearts over the people, if they really care about Uganda, if they really care about the economy of Uganda, let us not just speak about this government is doing this government has drained all the money.
I like that, Bishop.
But sincerely speaking, you who care about the people, let it not be a lip service. Why would you accept 200 million shillings and you stand on the floor of Parliament and you pass it? You know, if you really have the hearts of Ugandans, I don't expect you even to say that, okay, let each one of us get 200 million shillings. And that's when I said that now, Parliament, you make it to look like it's a transaction. For anyone now who wants to join politics or who wants to serve people, it's not about now service delivery. It's about, let me go there and I also earn. I need that 200 million shillings. So to me, it's not proper. It's not right. I would expect them actually to okay, I know they would like transportation, but let them pass something minimal, something minimal. But that is a very big allowance. Really. Who among those MPs has a car of even 100 million?
And they are receiving,
and it reports every day to work.
And they are receiving mileage, allowance of between 10 to 30 million.
There is nothing that a taxpayer doesn't pay for those MPs. I'm telling you, we are about to buy for them shoes. Everything we pay for them. That is it.
Bishop Samuel having amazing insights on Morning at NTV. Joseph Ocheno is coming to us live from Tororo. Yes, Joseph Ocheno, you're still on the line. What are your 2 cents on this conversation?
No, as I said much earlier, I just want to repeat a few specifics. One, that it's really not possibly about the insensitivity of the citizens in this country. I can tell you, as I said, I repeat on this program, Ugandans are amongst the best people across the world. We are the kindest. In fact, we're amongst those people who really forgive. You know what? And extremely tolerant. It is just about sensitivity. For instance, beyond the legislators, and I like the context within that which that has been put, the 200 million. Here in Nagongera, I really don't know how many people can afford today a car of 20 million shillings. In fact, they would be very delighted to drive a vehicle worth 20 million shillings. And 200 is a stretch. Number two, Mr. President, Comrade Kaguta, the man of freedom, the selfless sacrificer, asks with a huge amount of insensitivity for 10 billion shillings to beef up his presidential fleet at this time. Just like the guest before had just said, you are the supposed freedom fighter, Obama Deputy Jesus, who landed 36 years ago. Why do you need an extra money to beef up your fleet when you should be walking down the streets of Kampala and people holding you high on their chest? Just think about it. It's about that. Number three, very quickly. What happened when COVID came? And that's what I was saying. Citizens around the world came together. Ugandans came together, started to sacrifice and to offer. What we are saying is this. Those people who have slightly more should possibly slightly give a little bit more to communities. We should say that, well, for today, I'm not going to have a meal, let my others, my neighbor who doesn't have it. So what governments need around the world, some of them were to subsidize those who cannot afford. In Uganda's case, for example, National Waters could subsidize. I just realized the other day when I looked at my tax bill that apparently, rather my water bill, that we actually pay taxes for water. We should not. It's a key utility. We should not be paying taxes for that. If anything, that is where some kind of subsidy or discount should take place on. Number two, we pay taxes, to government. Government should save and government should invest on our behalf. In a time of crisis, this would be the time actually led by the Minister for Disaster Preparedness or so-called ministry, including planning, to make sure that we fill the gap, just like in the season of toughness. You use the little that you had saved, and then you defer. I know members of parliament, I know ministers around the world, and I know people in public places who decided to defer payment of their salaries for 12 months, for 8 months, took 50% pay cut. That is what we are asking of this wealthy lot in Kampala who are taking charge of this country and have done so for the last 36 years. And you know what? I'm saying to you, I go around the country and I talk to people, including in this lockdown. I had the other day to rescue somebody with merely 5,000 shillings. I said 6 because that sort of is what I had in my mobile money card. You know what? This is a serious senior citizen who genuinely did not have any money because of this lockdown.
Thank you very much, Joseph Ocheno, for that submission. Simon Ssenyonga, let's talk about another issue. This lockdown and so forth. We do not know when it's going to end, but citizens are grappling alike. Do you envisage a situation whereby more people are just dying because of hunger and poverty if we do extend this lockdown on Friday?
There's been massive reports on that, and I think NTV has done a credible job in exposing some of these, the unfair aspects happening under this lockdown. You see, when you talk about the government planning sufficiently for its individuals, it goes beyond just the technocrats like my colleague here sitting down and doing, and they do a very good job to think, to strategize, to do all these things. The biggest challenge is that the thoughts that are then translated into policy many a time are not in total consideration of the people who are they actually meant to, to affect.
Yes.
Most of these are simply Kampala thoughts, as I would call them.
Kampala thoughts.
I mean, the thoughts on a stop in Kampala. They don't think about a person at the lakeside, at all these places which are far off.
Is that why we saw the biggest majority of the beneficiaries of this COVID-19 relief coming from Kampala and the surrounding environment?
Because I saw the Lord Mayor. I think immediately after that was declared, he held a session in Parliament together with the leader of opposition, Honorable Matthias Mpuga, and they said, look here, Kampala, which is the epicenter of the outbreak of the coronavirus, has gotten meager resources in terms of the response. And what then happens is that the people who are supposed to be counted on, because the thing is that in the situation where we are, there is little hope from the government, all right, on all fronts. And this has to do nothing with the politicization of the discussion. The first champions of politicization of the COVID-19 debate was the government. When the government took a step to allow elections to happen,
That was the first mistake.
That was the first aspect of politicization. When the president ever stood and said that, look here, you, Honorable Zake Butebi from Mitiana, why are you serving, food relief? That was politicization.
We served it again and we cancelled it.
The mere fact that you're having people who are being deplatformed, people who, some of us who hold very strong views against lockdown, we are called all manner of names, conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers, all manner of things which seem to demoralize. But what we are doing is this. If the government cares, let them allow people and the nation to access information from all fronts. Let them not hide under the aspect of this is the safest information. What safe information means that there should be a potentiality of us countering it. What happens today is that you can't speak out against this person. You can't question this narrative. You can't question where this came out. Why? It's an emergency. So what is being driven in the individuals in the nation right now is fear, is despondency. The virus is too bad. There are variants coming in. True, people are dying. But then the front loading of fear makes us think that, look here, things are too bad. I've told you of one daily, I will not mention, out of protecting its dignity, which is front loading only ahead of, and has been very systematic. Wherever the president is going to address the nation, this daily comes up and says, look here, the numbers have done this. There's a concerted effort from all fronts to scare the nation that things are too bad.
2,605 people have died. I don't think you have to scare anyone with those numbers.
No, I mean, look at...
It's a scary number itself.
You see, when you talk about scientific numbers, you have to look at a comparative analysis. Those who are dying, those who have recovered. So it's not a question of magnifying those who are dying. Talk about the story of these who have recovered. But also give us the facts, give us the figures of those who have died, of other issues which are arising out of the lockdown.
Issues to do with poverty and hunger. And of course, people are still dying over not having food in their houses. And do you think we should continue giving out this COVID-19 relief and it shouldn't be a one-off?
I think there has to be a very clear, plan. I wrote a very interesting piece. I made research on the nation with the biggest cash transfer program is India, because it has a big population. Then we have South Africa, then we have Kenya. All of these, by the time they were rolling out for example, Kenya, when it was rolling out its cash relief program, the first people who were considered were the ones who are actually properly mapped out. What happens in Uganda today? The Honorable Prime Minister comes and tells us we are going to give out a cash relief program. We are relying on statistics from UBOS. The following day, UBOS appears before the parliamentary committee and says, the figures she's telling us, we have never seen them.
And then we have figures from the
biggest people who are the vulnerables today are in the informal sector. There is no clear data analysis of the informal sector because there is no clear policy regarding that. So this whole thing, what happens is that when they come before the media, they bastardize and stupefy the debate. How? By causing diversionary tendencies. So right now, no one wants to question the accountability. No one wants to question the supplementary budget of State House. No one wants to question the cartels which are being formed for vaccination. No one wants to question the biggest thieves,
the cartels for the vaccination. Are you talking about the Hamis Chigundu case where he received 2,000 vaccines to inoculate his tenants and workers?
So Honorable Anna Deke standing up on Parliament and asking, and the Honorable Nabanja diverted the debate. But the thing I'm saying here is this. What happens with our government today is that they bastardize the debate by diverting us. So they will tell us, no, don't think about State House. Don't think about the polluting the money. Don't ask for accountability. You focus on the MPs.
All right, Bishop Samuel, react to his submission. He's saying we shouldn't expect any hope from this government. That's one main point that he mentioned. What do you make of that?
First of all, I think this one's opinions are really too selfish, not so very, but even they're too selfish.
But they're based on facts. Yeah. Maybe we should counter.
Go ahead, Bishop Samuel. It is your time.
No,
it is your time.
There are no facts there that you have said. But anyway, the thing is, he has talked about supplement. I don't know why supplementary budgets are really a very disturbing issue to him. He has talked about supplementary budgets, accountability. My dear brother, listen.
I have a duty. Lord. Sorry, I have a duty under Article 17 of the Constitution to ask this question.
All right.
You don't have a duty to actually say
let him
there
respond.
are no clear facts. I'm telling you my legal obligation.
Yes, Bishop.
And I'm doing it
very
honorably.
You are very lucky. We are talking about legal obligations here because of the government has given you that space to talk about legal obligations.
Here we go again.
There are governments that you would not even sit here.
In their main government, this wouldn't have been possible.
You would not sit, and we don't argue that.
Why do you compare ourselves? Why do you want us to
Bishop Samuel,
the good thing is,
look at the bad countries.
Let Bishop finish.
The good thing is, Actually, I'm not comparing Uganda with USA or any other country. I'm talking about Uganda.
With other failed states. You're comparing me to failed states.
No,
all right, Bishop, we are running out of time, please.
Was a failed state then. It's not now a failed state.
Well, it's a failed state.
We have accountabilities that is talking about supplementary budgets and so on. They are passed in Parliament. The President Museveni does not impose these supplementary budgets without going through a process of Parliament. That is one. And the accountabilities you want, we have committees in Parliament. That's why they are there. And that's the reason as to why media houses like NTV, they are invited into Parliament when these committees have to question these officers to give accountability to taxpayers' money. Okay, this is the only transparency government that I know that has where accountabilities are given in light.
But there has not been transparency when it comes to the distribution of COVID-19 relief. And then many of the people are wondering, should we be continuing with the COVID-19 relief or should it be a one-off?
Let me tell you, that will come.
All right.
Yes, that will come. Be patient. That will come.
All right.
Okay, they will question them and they will give accountability. On the issue, my brother in Toro has talked about the fleet of cars of President Museveni. And a country which is on a high terrorism alert. Basically, those cars are not just a fashion, they are not just a design, they are supposed to be there to protect our president. And then on the issue he was saying that actually elections happened and so on and so forth.
Weaponization of COVID-19.
Let me tell you one thing. Elections had to happen. There is no line in the Constitution that says that elections wouldn't have happened in that period of time. He talked about Honorable Zake. Yes, the only distributing what he was distributing wasn't a bad idea, but we said let him hand over that whatever he wanted to distribute to the COVID-19 task force officers at the district.
But and the distributed.
Go ahead, Bishop.
You say you cannot tie up that crowd on Honorable Achen like as if he called them. She's one person actually who advised them, please maintain social distance, and I'm very sure, just like any other Ugandan, we had a scientific campaign. President Museveni did not call crowds. President Museveni made
Bishop Samba, before I let you go, what is government's plan of exiting this 42-day lockdown?
I wouldn't like to preempt. What my boss is going to address, but all I know, the lockdown is inevitable, and it has brought down numbers of COVID-19. For as long as we need to keep Ugandans' lives safe, there will always be a lockdown, and I can assure you, assure you, the Ugandans, I mean the government of Uganda, will take care of you Ugandans. Have hope in this government because you voted for it actually. No, because of its capacity. They did.
Finish,
Bishop. You need to vote for it.
All right. Let's now go to Joseph Ocheno, who is online, and we talk to him about his last 2 cents.
You voted for this.
Joseph Ocheno, a very good morning. Are you still online?
Hello.